welcome back, or welcome if you are new. My name is Damla, and on this channel I talk about anything related to books. In today's video, I thought I would do a May wrap-up, which is late because I am terrible at planning content. May was a surprisingly good month. I read 6 books somehow. I don't know how. Well, I mean, 5 books and 1 webcomic. So, without further ado, let's just get into it. I read Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. I read Romancing on Jeju by Hyeju Park and translated by Paige Morris. It's a Korean novel translated into English. I read the arc. I read Reboot and Rebel by Amy Tintera, and then 2 more that I read. I listened to Cultish by Amanda Montel, and then a Dutch book, What the Fuck, by Mariam Hassouni. I don't know what order I will be doing these in. I did a poll on my Instagram story a couple of days ago. Shameless promo. You can follow me on Instagram if you want. I did a poll asking if people prefer wrap-ups being ranked by chronological order or by ranked lowest to highest, or that they don't mind. And I basically got all 3 the same percentage, which does not help, but that's fine. I will find something. I think for now I might just do it in chronological order. I guess Lore Olympus was first, although technically speaking I did finish it in June because the last chapter came out I think June 1st or 2nd, but I am going to count it in because I read so many other chapters in May that I think it would be unfair. So Lore Olympus is a webcomic on Webtoon that basically is a retelling of the myth of Greek god Hades and Greek goddess Persephone. In the original story, long story short, Hades kidnaps Persephone to be his wife. How the story goes is that she stays in the underworld for 6 months, and then goes back to the mortal realm for 6 months where her mom is, because her mom is infuriated or just really upset that her daughter has been kidnapped. Understandably so. This story has quite a lot of retellings. I think this is the first one that I've read. I was interested in it because I did follow Greek classes in high school, about ancient Greece specifically, so we also got into some of the myths. And I will say, we didn't talk about Hades that much. I also didn't pay too much attention in those instances because I was very concerned with making sure my translations were correct, which I kind of regret now. So I'm trying to get back into Greek mythology again. Now that I actually do it for fun and I can do it and I don't have to worry about tests and stuff. This is a retelling that changes a few things. So first of all, Persephone's not kidnapped, and also the world of the gods is pretty interesting. It's kind of like a modern, our world version, but then you see the Greeks, ancient Greeks in the mortal realm are the ancient Greeks, so that's interesting. I thought that was kind of confusing, but it's also kind of cool, I guess. As for my overall opinion of it, I felt like the beginning was very good and had a lot of potential and was very interesting and was what, obviously pulled me in. But I felt like it was a little too long. I think it could have been significantly shorter. I think it was 280 chapters in total, and I just don't think it had to be that long. The ending, I suppose it was getting better in the sense that I felt like in the middle parts of the story, it felt like we weren't really going anywhere specific, or that it was taking a while. And so as the ending was nearing, you could tell that the pace was picking up. But then I felt like some events were skimmed over too much, if that makes sense. I will also say, I am not that attached to this comic. I think the comic is interesting and fun. It's a fun little thing that I read and I just kind of turn my brain off. Even though my brain doesn't fully turn off, because I do start thinking about stuff like how the heck it's possible that the Greek gods are in the modern ish world inspired thing and then the ancient Greeks are not. Anyway, in that sense it was fun. It was probably a little too long. I'm seeing a lot of people have very extreme opinions about Lore Olympus, and I really am in the middle. It was alright. I think if I had to give it a star rating, I would say 3 stars maybe. The art style is really pretty, although I have seen people who are more knowledgeable on this than I am, that the art is kind of inconsistent, but also releasing comic chapters on a weekly basis, I can only imagine the mistakes that would be made. Another thing that just came to mind about Lore Olympus, I felt like there were too many characters. Some, or maybe just one character that was sort of significant at the start, just wasn't there at all anymore at the end. And I guess it kind of made sense in some way, but also it felt weird because I was just like, okay, but what is this person doing? Like, what are they up to? We have no clue. Um, it's not that important, probably just a personal thing, but yeah, I thought it was fun and alright. Like, it was a nice little read. It probably could have been better though. Next, we have Cultish by Amanda Montell. This is a nonfiction book that I think goes into like the language of fanaticism. I think it's like the subtitle of it. Um, and I think I gave it 4 stars or maybe 3.5. I don't remember. It was good. I liked it. It could have been better. But I liked it more than I would have liked Lore Olympus, although fiction versus nonfiction is kind of difficult to compare. I wish the book was more in depth at times, and I saw a couple of reviews before I started reading it, or I think while I was listening to it as well, of some people saying that the book went into a specific direction as they were going into it that they didn't really expect, and I think I get what they mean. And without spoiling it too much, I also felt that way. Kind of wish that it was done differently. Although it was still interesting, but I was expecting something a little different. Still liked it. And I think it's especially a nice read for people who need like a book as like an entry into nonfiction, I suppose. So in that sense, it's nice. Then I listened to another audiobook, What the Fuck by Mariam Hassouni. She's alive, but she used to be a Dutch actress. Nowadays, she doesn't really do much acting anymore. I think she is pursuing writing. I think she's working on a book, actually. I'm not sure. But in this book, she basically details her experiences, falling in love with acting, wanting to become an actor, wishing to make it internationally at some point. And we follow some difficult experiences she goes through. I will also say I did not rate this book. I prefer not rating things like these where people include their personal stories because I just don't feel comfortable doing so. Because I can't really dictate how someone tells their story. I thought the writing style was great, and the book was narrated by the author herself, which for me always adds like an additional personal like touch to it, I think, and I think I especially like it even more. Jeanette McCurdy also did that with her memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died, and I also really like that. I will say, if there are people that want to get into this, if there happen to be Dutch people who would want to read this book, I will give a trigger warning for I guess racism, sexual assault, sexual harassment may be the better word for it. You know, it's not all bad, of course, but the things that are not as happy are heavy, and it is sort of a look into the film industry in the Netherlands, which I kind of expected had problems, but just it wasn't like I expected the Dutch film industry to be perfect, but I think when someone actually gives like a specific story that just hits you a little. So yeah, I want to say I enjoyed it, but I also don't want to say I enjoy listening to other people's pain. I just enjoyed listening to her story. Then I read Reboot by Amy Tantara and Rebel, the sequel and final book in this duology. This is a YA dystopian book that takes place in the US, I think in the future. Basically, there's this virus that has gone around, or there's just this virus that exists, and when some people die from it, I think especially adolescents, their body has a specific response to it where they come back to life, but they're not really human, and this is what is called rebooting or becoming a reboot. They are faster, stronger, like all of those qualities in human, but stronger in that sense. They are, I think, also less emotional from what I had gathered or what is told. And your strength as a reboot is dependent on how many minutes it took for you to be revived. We follow our main character Ren, who had been dead for 178 minutes before she woke up, which makes her the strongest reboot, I think, at least that is known of, that like they know of. And she ends up meeting and starting to train this new reboot called Callum, who I think his number was 22, so 22 minutes, which makes him basically human in a sense. And Callum is asking a lot of questions, not really agreeing with things. At some point, he is asked to do things, he's just like, no. Because also, reboots are kind of made to work for this organization that I guess supposedly tells the humans and the reboots that what they're doing is good, but it's kind of like propaganda, kind of brainwashing. So as Callum is kind of questioning things, Ren starts to think like, okay, well maybe he sometimes has a point, and some other things start to happen, and Ren starts to realize she may actually not be as emotionless as she thought. So that is kind of book one. I enjoyed the book. I also need to add, I read it in Dutch. I read the translated version of it, so that could also have affected my reading experience. It felt a little weird to read a book in Dutch because I'm not used to doing that, or well, reading fiction in Dutch. But it was alright. I got through it. I feel like the world building on this, I'm talking about both book 1 and 2, could have been deeper and gone more in depth. And just because this book is YA doesn't mean it has to be a bit surface level. There are some things that are explored, but they could have been explored more. For example, the concept of, spoiler alert, I guess, possible reboot babies, like 2 reboots having a baby. There's mention of it. We see a reboot baby, and we get some questions surrounding like reboots and humans. And honestly, I think these are all themes that could have been explored in a 3rd book even. So like this is one of the rare cases where I think a duology could have been a series of 3 books. So I liked it. I just wish it had more depth in that sense. I also wasn't a huge fan of the main character. I liked Callum, but I had to kind of like warm up to Ren, to be honest. I don't really know why. Maybe it was just vibes, and Callum was just like a very optimistic guy and very like just smiling all the time, very just, bright, and I guess I like those types of characters, whereas Ren came off as a bit more grumpy and more, oh, I don't want to say stone cold, but like emotionless, strict, stern, stuff like that. This is a reoccurring thing I see in YA. These people do not come across as 17-year-olds. Lastly, we have Romancing on Jeju, which is actually the first time ever that I read an arc, and I was really excited for this. It's a Korean novel translated into English, and it will come out on August 20th, 2024. It's written by Hyunju Park, and it was translated. So basically, in this book we follow 3 friends who decide to go on a trip to Jeju to find one of the girls is not really a love interest, some guy she met a couple of years ago there, and he kind of like dipped and they don't really know what happened to him, so they kind of want to look for him now. I really enjoyed this book. I think I gave it 4 stars. I really liked it. The start felt a little slow, but I feel like the book picked up pace around like the 50% mark. There were quite a lot of plot twists, which got a little overwhelming at times, but it might also just have been because I read the book very quickly, and sometimes without noticing it I like skipped over paragraphs, so that's on me. I really liked this book. I liked all of the characters. I liked reading a book that was about like adult women, because I think all of these women are in their 30s, and I read a lot of YA and maybe like new adult or characters that are like 20-ish, but that's about it. And that's probably a me thing, I don't know, but it was refreshing to read about adult women, Somewhere in the book it takes a more, not a dark turn necessarily, but it becomes a bit more of a mystery book. And I've read other reviewers say that some of them didn't like this and others did. I personally really liked it, but I do think if you are looking for just a romance, this is not for you. But if you are looking for a romance and you like mystery, this might be just it for you. Translation aspects, I think, were pretty good. There were a couple of instances where words weren't translated from Korean to English, for example, and just the English term was inserted. And I mean, I'm like one Google search away from finding out what the word is, but it would have been nice maybe to have like a footnote or something in the bottom, but that's just like a small nitpicky thing. Again, I really enjoyed this and I give it 4 stars. I'm considering adding a little segment to my videos or my wrap-ups where I talk about like media that I've watched, especially anime, because I like talking about it, and because I hope it kind of forces me to watch more anime, because I have this like thing where I'm like on and off watching it. I'm even worse with K-dramas. Anime is like somewhat consistent-ish. So, let me talk about the anime that I watched this month. This is technically a rewatch, so I will count it in even though I haven't finished it yet, just because I want to. And I'm rewatching this with my boyfriend actually. I am watching Yona of the Dawn, which is a fantasy romance anime that I absolutely love. So, like, I will not shut up about this. Oh gosh. We follow our main character Yona, who is a princess. I forgot what the kingdom's name is, but she's a princess. And I don't know how, you know what? Okay, I can tell you this because all of this happens in the first episode, I think. Her father, the king, gets murdered. I'm not going to say by who, but she is forced to flee the castle, because she might be next. And along with her comes her bodyguard. His name is Huck, and they basically just try to at least escape. And that's kind of where it starts. They meet more characters along the way, as you will also see in the opening, so this is not a spoiler, I guess. And it is 24 episodes. It sadly only has one season. I am delusional and convinced that there will be a second season at some point. I don't know if it actually will happen, but I hope so. So anyway, my opinion on it. I love Yona of the Dawn, in case you couldn't tell. It's really good. I think that the romance so far, from what I've seen, is just really good and develops very well. I also think Yona's character development is amazing. You will kind of see her in episode 1, and she kind of comes across as this like damsel in distress. She can't really do things on her own. She's not independent. And as the story progresses, you see her wanting to make those steps to become more independent, to learn things, to, grow as a person. And I think that's just amazing and really cool. And I really like that anime. So if you're looking for a nice fantasy romance anime, sadly there's only one season, but the season that is available is amazing in my opinion. So I think it's worth a watch. Secondly, this is an anime that I actually did finish watching this month. I finished watching A Sign of Affection, which I loved so much. I did not shut up about this anime to anyone who will listen. Oh my god. And now it's your turn. Like, it's crazy. I keep talking about it to my boyfriend. I talked about it to my friends because I was like, oh my gosh, But in this anime, we follow Yuki, who is our main character. I was gonna say protagonist. I think main character is a better term. She is deaf and is attending college. And she meets this guy, Itsuomi. They meet on the train. And, as expected in these kinds of anime, they fall in love. And I just think it's a very cute anime. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but I think it's very cute, very wholesome, and I think it gave a very good insight into what life for deaf people is like. It also, it's only been season 1 so far, but it's pretty educational. Not educational necessarily, like they're not like giving you a lesson on what life is like for deaf people, but you do get an insight into it. And sign language, communicating as a deaf person, and just like the difficulties or just the things that deaf people deal with every day that me as a hearing person, like, I don't think about at all. And I thought that was pretty interesting to see and kind of eye-opening. Now, okay, this is a bit of a spoiler section. I'm going to say it now. This is a spoiler. So if you haven't watched this anime, maybe it's best to skip this part, or I will put something on the screen and when it's gone, you can come back. Yuki kind of, as the show progresses, tries to become more independent in her own person. Because of course, deaf people have their accommodations and their needs, but they're not children, they're adults. And if Yuki likes a boy, if Yuki wants a boyfriend, she can have one. But her childhood friend, Oshi, he kind of still views her as like a child or someone who is like helpless, innocent, who can't really do things on her own. And Yuki at some point gets a little frustrated, and the show also pretty clearly shows that Yuki is perfectly fine asserting her boundaries, at least with people that she knows, and At first, I thought it was kind of sweet. I was like, oh, he's concerned for her. But then as I watched it again and I watched some people discuss this, I was like, it kind of comes across as if he doesn't think she can be an independent person. And like, just because you have some sort of disability does not mean cannot do things on your own at all. And even if you were to need any form of assistance, that doesn't make you a child, that doesn't make you helpless, that still makes you valid. If 널 보고 있음 음악이 baby 너를 위한 멜로디 yeah 네가 뮤지니까 잘 들어봐 play it 사실 말이지 since 17년 널 지켜봤지 말을 못했을 뿐 여전히 네 주위를 맴돌아 두 눈을 뗄 수가 없잖아 혹시 너도 같은 맘일지는 난 궁금해 I just really like this anime a lot because of how full-fledged the characters are. Anyway, I feel like I rambled about A Sign of Affection for most of this, so I'm going to stop. Let me know if you also enjoyed like the anime section / segment in my wrap-up, if you watch anime, of course, that is. Let me know what you thought of these books that I mentioned, if you have read any, if they're on your TBR, things like that. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more videos like this or just more content in general, you can check out my channel and maybe subscribe. And I said it earlier, but you can follow my socials. I have Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph. I will link all of those below, so you can find me there if you want to. And I think that's it. I hope you have a lovely day. Please take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!